Go, folks. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's Furman Football Weekly with the head coach Clay Hendricks. Paladins coming off of the loss at home to Mercer last week, going back on the road for the final time in SoCon play this Saturday at Chattanooga. And we'll get you updated for all the broadcast information coming up in just a bit, but joining Coach at the table, Riley Herbert and Ian Williams. And as always, we'll ask Coach Hendricks to make an opening statement, and then Scott Keeler will begin the grilling.
Thank you, Dan. First off, I'd just say hats off to Mercer, really good football team, really in all phases, kind of what I thought they were, just completing all those areas. That being said, I just really pleased how we started the football game. If you'd watched them this year, they had gotten off to fast starts. We've done that at times, but just how we started was just kind of what we wanted to do. Really kind of in all three phases of the game, but certainly weren't able to sustain that. I thought our kids, you go back and watch the tape, I thought they played with physicality. I thought they played hard. I think the thing really for us that just kind of continues to show up is probably just a lack of the ability to execute in key moments of the game. And, there have been obviously this year, and when we haven't been successful, turnovers offensively have played a huge role. And then I think the other thing defensively that shows up is just the number of explosion plays that we've allowed. I think you kind of combine that with some, like I said, consistent execution, which, it goes back to me, that's us as coaches. We've got to get our guys to execute at a higher level. And, you do that against a good team and you get exposed, and especially over time. But getting proud, felt like we had all kinds of chances there, and in the third quarter there just kind of got away from us. We couldn't get stops, couldn't stay on field on offense. And again, when you do that, you don't get the results you want. So we'll continue to push forward, play up. Chattanooga team is playing really well. It's getting better. Has been getting better all year long, and so we got a chance to finish really strong in our league, and that's our goal. And we'll head out there this afternoon, have our first practice for Chattanooga, and looking forward to it. But with that, we'll take any questions you may have.
Coach, I know it's not always a simple formula. I know different quarterbacks get rid of it different ways and stuff like that, but this is one of those other games where you didn't have a sack and the result was what it was, and it seems to be a theme in the losses a little bit this year. I know everything's different, but can you just, how different could it have been if you could have got to him a few times, hit him, but didn't get him down?
Yeah, good question. Obviously pressure the quarterback, it's big. Again, credit them. They did exactly what you thought they were going to do. He gets it out of his hand, but they're also going to max protect. They're going to throw the ball down the field, which makes it challenging. They also going to try to make it as hard on Josh out there as it could. I'm not sure there's hardly ever a time where two people weren't on him initially, which we kind of expected. Which again, we got way more one-on-ones. I think another thing just shows up is just the number of one-on-ones we keep losing. Our sport is, I think, a sport of one-on-ones, and you're not going to win them all, but you got to win your share. And but no, I think so. Scott, when I went back, we actually hit him more than I thought we did. We were just always seemed to be a half step short. There were a couple of times it was bang, bang, hit him, and they end up in big plays. But I also think, it's, we're 13-0. I think this just kind of summed the day up, and actually, Coach Vaughn put a clip on there this morning in our meetings for our defense, and we got 3rd and 6 backed up. We're fixing, it's 13-0. I think we're gonna get the ball back in midfield again. And we run a little game up front, and we flush him. We got a guy that's supposed to be rapping. He is the guy that you flush him to, and you think either sack or a throwaway. Well, he doesn't rap. So now there's nobody there to stop him. Josh gets grabbed pretty good on the backside, but he's going to get there. And then even then you're okay. We got good coverage, and now the guy in coverage decides he's going to stare back in the backfield. And when he does, the guy turns it into a scramble drill. Completion, first down. They make another first down, then make a 3rd and 16, and then I think the next play they're in the end zone. So, we're a team that needs to be able to executing. You're not gonna do it all the time. But that was something we had total control over, just total control. And that's the stuff we gotta be able to do. You can look at the explosion plays. You know, yeah, we've been run by some. Usually when we've been run by, it's because we bid on something we shouldn't have bid on. But just think if people just line up and run by us, I haven't seen that as much. You know, and Raleigh had one with the back out of the backfield. The guy made an unbelievable throw. Had pretty good coverage. It happens, you know, sometimes. But again, controlling things we can control. But we just got to find a way. You know, more of those one-on-ones. Again, we can't expect our guys to cover a team like that for a long period of time. And he had way too much time.
Riley, when you guys did get pressure, I know you got a pretty good hit on him one time. How frustrating is that for a defense as the game goes on? Does that wear on you mentally at all?
I mean, I think it's just a next play mentality. I mean, you know, things are going to go good, things are going to go bad. It is a little frustrating. I mean, not being able to get home and secure a sack or get a turnover in some of those situations, but we're coached for it. We know if we have to stay on the field, we have to get a stop. And that's kind of back to what Coach was saying. We have to make some of those plays that we didn't make. More one-on-ones have to be won. I know they were chipping Josh most of the game, so we have to get home in other places. And I think it's just a collective effort of staying together and, you know, playing as a heartbeat defense, and just, you know, finding a way to get off the field when we need to.
And yeah, a typical weekend in college football is always something new that pops up. One thing that makes it such a great sport and to be a fan of. And I'm sure this past weekend, you couldn't help but notice the shorts or pants that the Oklahoma kicker debuted. You had a conversation with the head coach maybe about you going to something like that, a different look at Furman. And also I wanted to ask you, what is the longest kick you've made in practice? We know what you've done. You made 2 57-yarders in a game. What do you feel like you could, game on the line, what could you hit? Not to give any away trade secrets, but thought I'd ask.
No, I always kind of go out there in the warm-ups. My long in practice is 70, so I always kind of feel comfortable around like 60, 65. But in game, it kind of all depends. You really want a long one, but I feel like I could probably hit a 65-yard field goal in the game. But it all depends on the win situation and stuff. But I definitely feel comfortable back there, no matter even trying a 57. But no, I did see the pants from the Oklahoma kicker. It's kind of funny of seeing how you can just do that, but I don't like to roll my pants up that high. I like to kind of look like a football player. But no, I definitely have a big leg, but I definitely would like to try something 60 plus this week or through the rest of the season. So looking forward to that.
Clayton, you and I talked I think it was during the pregame interview prior to this past weekend. One of the things we talked about was how much of your roster is still redshirt sophomore and under. I mean, you've got a young team that speaks to the developmental nature of your program. What's the balance between winning now, which is obviously what you want to do, but understanding with that many young players that it's a process?
Well, I think I understand this process, you know. I'm not the most patient person, you know, as it is to begin with. But, you know, I don't know, at the end of the day, you try to play your best players. I never feel like those guys are the best players, give us the best chance. I think last week, eight of the 11 on defense, sophomores, freshmen, starters. Really be 9 if Ryan Earl was able to go. You know, we lost him earlier, and we'll end up redshirting. So, you know, it kind of is what it is. I think a little bit of a place like Furman, you kind of got to build for some of those years, and you got those gaps now. You know, hard to overcome the 41 guys. You knew that wasn't going to happen overnight. We had the 41 seniors a couple years ago, and in the world that we live in now, I think for us, it's, you know, we can keep those guys together, you know, going forward. Yeah, I mean, now is an interesting time in college football. Probably gonna get really interesting here in a couple of weeks, you know, the next month or whenever that is. But, you know, I just think we're a player development place. Still doing it largely with high school kids. I mean, you look at a guy like Caleb Easterling, you know, he's played 3 games now. So we're not, you know, we got 3 games. We're not gonna start a year on him, 3 games, but he's gonna play this week. That's the plan. You know, I looked, our first 3 touchdowns last week were all true freshmen. You don't want to be in that. We're not playing a ton of true freshmen, but all 3 of those guys have been big time contributors. I think our other touchdown was Keith, he's sophomore. So, yeah, I think as we kind of continue to build, you know, some injuries have created some of that a little bit too. Now we're just going, we got to keep developing players. And again, we got, you know, a little harder when you got those young guys to execute at the level you want to execute. They don't have the reps built in. Now we played 9 football games, so we shouldn't be making some of the mistakes we're making. But no, I'm kind of, let's play now. I don't think I think you always probably have a couple of kids who maybe could have plugged in. I think where it's probably hurt is the special teams with the number of injuries we've had. That was one of the biggest concerns we had last week in kickoff return, having so many new guys that hadn't played, hadn't done that, and then, you know, probably tells you how much coaching matters because, you know, Chad had a really simple plan for those guys, and I always thought you got a guy that would hit it, you know, and he hit it. It's got the ability there because I thought special teams last week really solid. You know, got a good return to start the game. We've done a much better job covering. I think with the exception of the one punt that we let them, it should not have happened. You know, we got an older guy that's got to contain the ball in the field, and you know, it should not happen. Again, another one of those details. But you know, I like to. We're going to keep playing the best ones we got better. But you know, Jackson Pryor's going to go in and actually going to have surgery this week. You know, he got hurt in game 2, had the same exact injury that Josh had last year, game 2. His was not as extensive, and he tried to come back game 4, hurt it again. He's been rehabbing, he just hadn't been, and he's played in 4 games. So at this point in time, we just said, let's go ahead and have the surgery and get him healthy. And he got forced into playing a year ago. Now he's able to redshirt. You know, he was preseason first team all-conference guy that we really didn't get much out of this year because of that. But had some other guys step up and do some good stuff. So we'll just continue to try to keep developing those guys.
Raleigh, I think you played a couple games freshman year in 23 and like 8 games last year. To be named captain this year as a sophomore, what did that mean to you? And Coach, can you kind of speak to how rare that is for that honor around here?
Yeah, I'll just say I was very fortunate and very thankful of my teammates. Kind of showing up here, I knew I was just going to have to work. I think a lot of people before me have had to do the same thing. But I kind of tried to just focus on putting my head down and doing the right thing, being the best person I could be for the team. And so I just tried to give everything to them, and I was very grateful of them for, you know, selecting me in that role. And I'm a happy leader and grateful to be able to take those guys to war every weekend.
Yeah, I'd say that's a rarity. You know, in all my time at Furman, I don't remember that happening very often. I think, you know, Rod's a great example of, you know, obviously actions speak louder than words. He's become a good vocal leader for our team, but man, his actions just, I think, are kind of the key. You know, what he does. You know, incredible student at Furman. He's been a really good player. I don't care if it's in the weight room, whatever it is, an encourager, a positive guy. And can't say I was shocked by that at all. And again, we had a younger group. I was always kind of interested when we did do it, how that would come out. But again, a lot of respect for him. I mean, he's one of those guys too. You think about a guy in his role, what he's been able to do. But no, wasn't surprised by that at all.
Ian, I don't think a lot of people realize the skill level that goes into what you do. I don't know if you've probably done a lot of film study on guys at the next level. I know the guy with the Panthers hits it sort of like a soccer ball on kickoff. How much prep work, and is there a guy that you sort of look at as a style of kicker that you'd like to emulate?
Yeah, definitely. Haven't really worked the kickoff rule yet. That's definitely something I'm going to be doing in the off season for the next level. So I'm kind of excited to see what I can do on the kickoff. I feel like I'm pretty good at doing kickoffs, so I feel like I could do something kind of tricky. But someone I kind of look up to, I mean, he's kind of a dog. Brandon Aubrey for the Cowboys. He's got a huge leg, just super accurate. He was one of those soccer guys coming up, didn't really play college football, and he kind of just stepped in the role for the Cowboys kicker, and he's just an animal. So that's definitely a cool guy to look up to, and just, I mean, he's a great kicker, so I definitely want to look up to him.
And Ian, staying with you, talking about that balancing act again, you're obviously going to be all in for your teammates the rest of the season, but you also have a future to look forward to. How do you balance that? What does that off season look like as you prepare for what should be a pretty good opportunity to play in the NFL?
Yeah, I'm just fortunate to be in the spot with 3 games left. I got to do everything I can to kind of showcase how I do, and it's just all about the team. And it's unfortunate that we don't get any field goals, but I think I can showcase my ability on the punting side of things. Like, we have 8 punts in a game, so I feel like I've kind of adapted the role. Coach is always pushing me to hit better punts, and I feel like in games I've kind of stepped into that role and do the best I can and kind of get the best field position for us as a team, so it kind of just balances out.
Coach, if you could preview Chattanooga for us and what you see. I know you talk to Rusty on a fairly regular basis, and we've seen those guys a lot, counting that playoff game, a couple of extra playoff game 2 years ago.
Yeah, so I guess we played them, I guess, twice in 23. And, you know, I have a lot of respect for Rusty. I like Rusty a lot. You know, we kind of bounce stuff off each other from time to time, but you know, I've always had respect for Chattanooga. I mean, going back to when I was a player, they've always had talent. They've always been talented. I think they've always been well coached. You know, so be a big challenge for us. You know, kind of interesting. They lost a bunch of guys from a year ago. I think from graduation, from probably first portal. I think they lost a bunch more. In the other portal, they've still taken a lot of guys because you still see a lot of transfers on their team. And so a little bit younger group certainly than I think they've been used to playing with. I thought they had an incredibly tough schedule. You know, I think their non-conference was Memphis, Tarleton, Tennessee Tech. I think only, you know, Tarleton got their first loss last week, and I can't remember who the other one was, but you just kind of watch them. They got a little better each week, play hard, had every opportunity against Western last week, had a really good comeback win to beat East Tennessee. You know, I think the guy that's made him go is the quarterback. You know, I didn't really realize this is his 7th year of college football. First year there, but 7th year. Big guy, you know, that will run the. He's a dual threat guy that certainly you can tell he's a competitor. You know, he hard guy to tackle. You know, probably not as much of a twitchy guy as he's kind of a fast, big body to tackle. Throws it well. They run the ball well. They've always played good defense. So no, it'd be a good, really good challenge for us. But you know, place we, you know, I don't know, place we played well over the years, and you know, so certainly looking forward to. You know, we got a chance again to finish really strong in our league, and we're going to try to control what we can control. And it starts with a great week of prep. You know, and again, we'll start out there today, and you know, like I said, it'll be. Again, we got to play complementary football, and hadn't been doing that. You know, defense hadn't been helping the offense a lot in some of these games, and vice versa. Offense hadn't done a lot to help defense sometimes either. So, but we've shown we can do some really good things. I think we're getting better, and hopefully we can play our best game Saturday.
Coach, I think I know a couple of people are going to go ahead and redshirt this year because I see about a few more guys that we didn't see Saturday. Just update Gavin Hall, Ethan Harris, and Caleb Williams.
Yeah, Gavin had surgery last week. You know, Gavin had dealt with that. Had played with a bad wrist kind of most of the year. Then he actually injured it in another spot. I guess like the first or second play of the Citadel game. So went ahead and fixed that. So Gavin's out for the year. And again, you know, he's another guy who was a trooper, a sophomore for us playing. You know, Ethan's been trying to get back. You know, I think Ethan's only played in a handful of games, and they were in the middle of the run. You know, he was out initially, lower body. You know, think that he could get better. We'll see this week. We're hopeful to get him back. And who else?
Caleb Williams was the other one I said.
Yeah, Caleb, same thing. You know, Caleb had a couple off-season surgeries, and it's a little bit of a lingering thing with him. It's been kind of ongoing all year, where he's tried to, you know, some weeks he's been able to practice, but hadn't been able to play very much. You know, was a guy that started most of the year last year, really hadn't played him at all, really this year. So again, as we get our reports, we'll see what we can do out there today. Eli Brasher we didn't have last week, we'll get him back. So it's that time of year where everybody's getting a little bit of that. That's kind of where we are.
Coach, if I understand things correctly, there's gonna be just one transfer portal window this year, is that correct?
Well, what's the day? Today's November the 4th, that's what they're saying today.
If that's the case, is that better for college football?
I
Is
don't
it-
know.
is it not?
I think it's probably better because, in theory, as I was told at the, I was at the FCS head coaches meeting last January. And the next day was the FBS meeting. And we were told by the hierarchy that day, they actually took a vote, 1 versus 2. And they kind of like for the FCS coaches to be unanimous, and they take that to the FBS because a lot of the things we did the same. And I think it was a unanimous vote. I'm not sure if everybody wanted to do that or not, but I'll never forget the guy said, we were told exactly that moment. He said, no, the SEC is adamant about keeping 2 points. They're adamant. They're meeting the next morning, less than 24 hours away. And I talked to a guy who was in that meeting. They said they didn't have any talk. They came in there immediately. People were trying to ask questions and no, we're gonna take a vote. And they voted, and I think somebody said, I don't know how many teams are in the SEC now. Is it 19 or something?
37.
Whatever it is, but they said there were 15 of the 19 in the meeting, the coaches in the meeting, they want you there. It was unanimous, 1 point. After he told us the day before, the SEC was adamant to have 2 portals. So, what changed, I don't know. I think theory behind it was, at least after that portal, in March, you got who you got. You're not coaching guys all spring, and then there's a spring portal, and then they all depart again. I think the problem is, that portal's, I think now it's January 2nd and 16th, and that sounds right. Now they've extended it, which I never understood why the extension. Too many people with voices, in my opinion, because it's a proven fact, they go in the first 2 or 3 days. And they're gonna know, so we're sitting here in the month of December, which for the FBS is largely dead, nobody's in the portal, so you really can't, what are you doing? We have an early December signing day, this year I think it's December 3rd. So I think it got pushed to January because that 10 or 12 teams that think they're either in the playoffs, they don't want the burden probably of having to deal with the portal while they're doing some of that. My analogy there has been, when you go to the Super Bowl, you get picked last in the draft. That may be a way to balance that. And they all have mega staffs anyways that are controlling all that. But that's what it is. But you think about it, we start school in the middle of that portal. Most people probably do. You got to get people admitted to school. Around here, a little different than a lot of places. So it's gonna be an interesting time. Even grads this year can't go in. If Ian had another year, he's graduating in December. And had another year, he can't even go in until January. So in theory, you can't talk to him. So now I think what's gonna happen, you're gonna have all these NIL agents. It's going on now, contacting people. I can get you this and I can get you that. So it's we interested.
Hasn't anybody ever told you not to apply logic to an illogical situation?
It's just, like I said, I think one point is probably a pretty good way to go. At least when you got your guys, you kind of know who you got, but you don't have to worry about losing your team right before the summer. But I don't think it's, I don't think it's changed. It's kind of this 5 for 5 thing that you've been hearing. They keep saying it's going to pass eventually, but I was told they're going to pass it once the litigation stops. When do you think that's going to happen? And I said, well, are they going to go back and that kids? I said, no, it's going to be from that point forward. Those kids will be the 5 for 5. So, but again, who knows?
Yeah, before we wrap it up, I'd just be interested to get the player's perspective on all the noise and all the madness going on around right now when you guys are just want to get good grades and I want to play college football? I mean, did you pay attention to all this mess?
I mean, I think what you said is pretty much it. I just kind of want to get good grades and play college football. I'm happy where I'm at. And I don't really tone into a lot of that stuff. I think a lot of it's just for the outside sources to, kind of go over and, figure out if it's right or not. Obviously, college football has changed in the past, 10 years or so, just with NIL, and even since just 2020, honestly. But again, I think a lot of that's not for us to, be indulging in right now. Just want to win football games and be the best player I can be.
Yeah, from a guy who has been in the transfer portal, and Coach said it right, it is hard to get into the school. So, I don't know. This is my last year of college football, so yeah, it's definitely just focused, nose on the grindstone, and just trying to finish out the year. But yeah, it's just crazy. I try to stay out of it and just kind of focus on myself.
Well, at the risk of gaining an unwarranted reputation here, we'll get into wrap-up mode. And Coach, I'll ask you for a final statement.
No, again, appreciate you being here. Again, excited. We got 3 games, and we kind of, really, this week's all that really matters. But excited to go play against a really good opponent. And we're in a similar kind of situation within the conference with them, and so we just want to do our very best to finish strong. And since the older guys that we have, which we don't have a ton of them, would send them out with a great note, start building for what's down the road. But looking forward to going to Chattanooga and playing. Got a noon kickoff, and so excited about that too. So we're looking forward to making that trip and hopefully come back with a win.
Well, Coach just mentioned it's a noon kickoff in Chattanooga on Saturday. ESPN Plus for the television viewership, and from a radio standpoint, we'll be on the air with the Pepsi Countdown kickoff at 10:30 in the morning. So if you can't make it, you can tune in via the Fan Upstate. Our thanks, as always, to Coach Clay Hendricks, Riley Herbert, and Ian Williams for being with us this week. For Coach and all of us here at Furman, I'm Dan Scott. God bless you, and so long, everybody.